You're asleep, completely out drooling on your pillow, probably snoring, zero awareness of the world around you. You are, by every biological definition, helpless. Now imagine you're not in your bedroom, you're in a tent. A thin piece of nylon, like embarrassingly thin, separating you from a forest full of animals that could absolutely end you if they felt like it. Lions, bears, wolves, leopards, creatures that can hear your heartbeat from across a clearing, smell you from a mile away and see perfectly in the dark while you're just lying there with your eyes closed. And yet, you wake up in the morning every single time. Why? Seriously, think about this for a second. A sleeping human is just meat. Slow meat, white meat, meat that can't fight back, can't run, can barely even register that something's happening until it's already happening. You'd think predators are recircling campsites every night like some kind of all-you-can-eat buffet. But they're not. They almost never are. And the reason they're not, it's not one thing, it's never just one thing. There are several layered explanations, each one more fascinating than the last, and together they paint this picture of a strange, invisible agreement between humans and the wild. An agreement that goes back further than civilization, further than agriculture, further than anything we normally think of as human history. This goes deep. Let's go. Start with the thing that sounds like an ego trip, but is actually just biology. You are terrifying. Not you specifically. You right now watching or reading this are probably fine, normal, not particularly scary. But humans as a species, to predators, we are genuinely, deeply evolutionarily frightening. Not in a way that's obvious from looking at us. We don't have claws, we're not fast, we're not particularly strong for our size, we can't even see well in the dark. On paper, we're kind of a disaster as an animal. And yet, a study published in 2019 by researchers at UC Santa Cruz found something remarkable. They play audio recordings of human voices near mountain lions, also called pumas or cougars, in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California. Normal human voices, people just talking. And the pumas fled. They fled at the same rate they fly from the sound of dogs barking, and in many cases even faster. These are animals that take down full-grown deer like it's nothing. Animals that can drag a kill up a steep hill. Animals that are objectively absolute units of predatory efficiency. And they heard a podcast and ran. That wasn't a one-off result. The same research showed that pumas abandoned food they'd already killed, food they were in the process of eating. When they heard human voices nearby, they left their meal on the ground and moved away from the sound. From a survival standpoint, that's an enormous cost. A predator giving up a kill is basically working for free. The calories burned to make that kill don't get replenished. And they still did it because the discomfort of being near humans outweighed the cost of hunger. That result confirms something biologists had been noticing across multiple continents and multiple species for a long time. Lions in Africa's Kruger National Park reduced their movement in areas with higher human activity. Tigers in India give wide bursts to villages, even when those villages sit in the middle of prime habitat. Jaguars in the Amazon have adjusted their movement patterns to avoid locations where humans are regularly present. These aren't animals that are physically incapable of attacking. They're animals that have decided at a species level over thousands of generations that being near us isn't worth it. And the reason for that is one of the most brutal facts in natural history. We have been hunting and killing large predators for so long and so effectively that we have literally shaped their genetics. Think about the scope of that. Humans have been active predators for somewhere around 2 million years. We hunted mammoths out of existence. We wiped megafauna off entire continents. Giant sloths, woolly rhinos, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, species that had thrived ice ages, vanished within thousands of years of humans arriving in their territories. In North America, we hunted wolves to near extinction across the entire continental landmass. We eliminated mountain lions from the entire eastern half of the continent. We shot, tracked, and poisoned predators so systematically and for so long that the ones alive today are descended from the animals that were most careful around us. That's not a metaphor. That's natural selection. The lions that approached human camps too boldly got killed. The wolves that preyed on human settlements got hunted down. The predators that kept their distance, that treated humans as something to avoid rather than something to engage with. They survived, they reproduced, they passed that inherited caution to their offspring. Over thousands of years and thousands of generations, that caution became biological. It became instinct. It became the baseline behavior of every large predator that shares space with humans today. So when a leopard picks up your scent in the night, somewhere deep in its nervous system a very old alarm goes off. Not a thought exactly. It's not sitting there consciously thinking about human history, but an ancient Wyerdian inherited signal that says, be careful around that thing, don't engage, move on. That alarm has been passed down from every ancestor of that leopard that survived a close encounter with humans. It's a biological memory and it runs deep. Now let's talk about your smell. You probably never really thought about how you smell because you're surrounded by other humans all the time and you've normalized it completely. But you're a predator operating with a nose that's anywhere from 10 times to 100,000 times more sensitive than yours depending on the species. You are broadcasting an enormous, detailed, and deeply strange chemical signal. Bears have a sense of smell estimated to be about 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's. Wolves can detect scents from merely 2 miles away under the right conditions. Big cats have a specialized organ in the roof of their mouths, the Jacobson's organ, that essentially lets them taste the air and analyze chemical information at a level we can barely imagine. When these animals encounter a sleeping human, they are receiving a flood of olfactory data, and a lot of that data is just wrong. You smell raw. You smell like synthetic fabrics like nylon and polyester and whatever chemicals were used in the manufacturing process. You smell like processed food, the meal you ate hours ago, the snacks in your bag. You smell like soap and shampoo and sunscreen and insect repellent, a cocktail of artificial compounds that has no analog anywhere in the natural world. Beneath all of that, underneath the layers of modern, humid life, you smell like a primate, which is something, but it's not the thing. Not the deer or the wildebeest or the rabbit that these predators have evolved over millions of years to recognize and hunt. A predator's hunting instinct is not generic. It's not a vague desire to kill things that moves. It's a finely tuned system calibrated to specific prey. A wolf's predatory response is triggered by the movement patterns of ungulates. A lion strike mechanism is activated by the shape and speed and smell of animals it has hunted thousands of times. You don't fit the pattern. You're not in the system. You're an anomaly. Anomalies trigger caution rather than aggression in most predators. There's also the campfire effect, which is one of the most underrated things humans have ever figured out. Fire is one of the only stimuli that produces a near universal fear response across virtual all land animals. It's not a learned behavior. It's not something animals figure out from experience. It's innate. It's ancient. Animals that were afraid of fire in the wild survived wildfires by running. Animals that weren't afraid of fire didn't. The fear is so deeply embedded that laboratory-raised animals who have never been near fire in their lives will show avoidance behavior at the smell of smoke. It goes that deep into the evolutionary code. Humans discovered fire somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, and for most of that time, sleeping next to a fire has been standard operating procedure. We weren't doing it just for warmth or to cook. We were doing it, maybe without knowing it consciously, because it works as a repellent. A campfire doesn't just keep you warm. It broadcasts a signal into the surrounding dark that says something dangerous is here. Something that controls fire. Something that should be avoided. The predators got that message. And they've been getting it for so long that the message doesn't even need to be decoded anymore. It just triggers avoidance automatically. You figured that out before you figured out farming, before you figure out pottery or writing or architecture. Fire first. Smart move, honestly. Now let's tackle the biggest myth about predators, because movies have spent decades getting this completely wrong. Predators are not reckless. This is so important. The image of the apex predator as this fearless, unstoppable killing machine that attacks anything within range is fiction, pure fiction. In reality, large predators are extraordinarily careful about what they engage with, because they have to be. A lion doesn't have health insurance. A wolf doesn't have sick days. One serious injury, a broken leg, a deep bite wound. A damaged eye can mean a slow death by starvation. In the wild, injuries don't heal at the vet. They either heal on their own, while the animal somehow still has to eat and hunt, or they don't heal and the animal dies. This means every single decision a predator makes about whether to engage with something is a survival calculation. Is the caloric value of this target worth the risk of injury? Is this prey item familiar enough that I know how it will behave? Is the chance of a successful hunt high enough to justify the energy expenditure? A sleeping human fails this calculation in multiple ways. First, unfamiliarity. A predator is most confident attacking prey it knows. It's watched a prey animal hundreds of times. It knows how a zebra runs, where its blind spots are, how it kicks when it panics. It does not know how a human will respond. Humans are wildly unpredictable. We might wake up screaming. We might have tools nearby. We might have other humans nearby who will respond. We might thrash in completely unexpected ways. For a predator trying to minimize risk, that level of uncertainty is a massive red flag. Second, the size question. Humans, when they stand up, are actually pretty big. We're tall, upright, and our bipedal postures, standing on two legs, makes us appear larger and more imposing than most prey animals of equivalent weight. Researchers studying predator-prey dynamics have noted that bipedalism is itself a kind of threat display. Standing upright is what gorillas do when they want to intimidate. It's what bears do when they want to look threatening. A creature that walks around like that all the time as its default mode reads as inherently assertive to other animals. Even asleep, the silhouette of a human shape is unusual in a way that doesn't say easy meal. Third, and maybe most importantly, why bother? There are almost always easier options. A predator with a healthy territory and a functional ecosystem has access to prey it knows, prey it's comfortable hunting, prey that fits its biological template. Going after something strange, unknown, and potentially dangerous when there's a perfectly available impala or rabbit in the vicinity makes no sense from a survival standpoint. The risk-reward math just doesn't work out. Here's something else that almost never comes up in these conversations. Your sleep is not as deep as you think. This is actually one of the more astonishing things about human biology. We experience sleep in cycles. You go down into deep slow wave sleep, then you come back up into lighter stages, including REM sleep, where your brain is actually quite active. And during those lighter stages, researchers have found that your brain remains surprisingly responsive to the environment around you. External sounds don't get processed. Unfamiliar noises are more likely to break through into awareness than familiar ones. Scientists call this the sentinel function of sleep. The idea is that even while resting, animals, including humans, maintain a partial watch on the environment. Your brain, during light sleep stages, is still filtering sensory input and flaking things that seem unusual or threatening. A twig snapping loudly nearby, the sound of a large animal moving through a brush. A change in the air pressure and smell that comes with something large approaching. These things can pull you toward waking faster than you might expect. This is not an accident. The humans in our evolutionary history who slept too deeply, who were completely unresponsive to nighttime threats, were more likely to not wake up at all. The lighter sleepers, the ones who could go from asleep to on their feet in seconds, were the ones who survived and reproduced. Over hundreds of thousands of years, human sleep got tuned to stay light enough to respond to threats. We sleep lighter and in shorter cycles than most large mammals, partly because our evolutionary legacy assumed there would always be things in the dark worth waking up for. So, while you feel completely helpless when you're unconscious, you're actually running a fairly sophisticated early warning system. Not perfect, not foolproof, but present. And then there's the group factor. Humans are almost never actually alone when they camp. We travel in groups, sleep in groups, and those groups respond collectively. Predators across the animal kingdom understand group dynamics at a deep level because their prey animals also form groups. A wildebeest in the middle of a herd is much safer than a wildebeest at the edge. A fish in the center of a school is much harder to target than one that's been separated. Predators don't just attack prey, they hunt for separation. They look for the isolated individual, the one that's fallen behind, the one that's been cut off from the group. A camp full of sleeping humans is a group, and not just any group, a group that when one member wakes up and makes noise will likely wake up the others. That collective response is deeply unappealing to a predator trying to make a clean, low-risk kill. The risk of a hunt going wrong, of turning into a chaotic group defense situation, is exactly the kind of thing predators are evolved to avoid. Now, let's be honest about something, because this video would be irresponsible if it wasn't. None of this means you're untouchable. The attacks that do happen, and they do happen, follow a consistent pattern. They almost always involve circumstances that have broken the normal rules. A predator that's injured and can't hunt its normal prey. A predator that's starving because its habitat has been destroyed and its usual food sources are gone. A predator that's had so much contact with humans that it's lost its inherited wariness. This happens disturbingly fast when animals are fed by tourists or come to associate human presence with food rather than danger. Or a predator that's simply old and desperate, past its physical prime, unable to catch the prey it used to hunt. The lions of Chisabel in Kenya are the most famous example. In 1890, 2 male lions attacked and killed somewhere between 35 and 135 railway workers over about 9 months. The historical records disagree on the number and the legend grew in the retelling. But what's often left out is that these were unusual lions. Both were maneless, which is atypical. One had severe dental damage that likely made its normal prey much harder to hunt. These weren't representative of lion behavior. They were exceptions created by exceptional circumstances. The Champawat tiger, responsible for an estimated 436 deaths in India and Nepal in the early 1900s, was later found by the hunter Jim Corbett to have been shot in the mouth at some earlier point, shattering 2 of its canine teeth. It can no longer hunt its natural prey effectively. It had been pushed by injury and then by habitat encroachment into hunting the only prey that was consistently available and physically manageable. The pattern repeats across almost every documented case of large predator attacks on humans in camp or at rest. Something broke. The normal calculation changed. The inherited caution got overridden by desperation, which means the rule holds almost universally in conditions where the ecosystem is intact. The predator is healthy and the humans haven't done something to scramble the normal signals like leaving food out, approaching wildlife, or eliminating the campfire because it seemed unnecessary. There's one last layer to this that I save for the end because it's genuinely the most mind-bending part of the whole thing. We have been so effective at making the natural world afraid of us that it's now causing problems we didn't anticipate. That same 2019 UC Santa Cruz study didn't just document that pumas are afraid of humans. It documented that this fear cascades through the entire food web in ways that are difficult to fully control. When pumas avoid areas where humans are active, the deer in those areas face reduced predation pressure. Deer populations in those zones increase. That increased deer population overgrazes vegetation. Meanwhile, medium-sized predators, coyotes, bobcats, foxes, also reduce their presence near humans, which means the rodent populations they normally control start expanding. Everything shifts, and it shifts because of us, because of our presence, because the fear we've generated over millennia radiates outward to the ecosystem like a signal. We change the behavior of every predator layer on the continent without ever directly interacting with most of those animals, just by being there, just by being the thing that evolution told them to be afraid of. One species, one inherited fear, ripples across the entire living world. The most dangerous animal on the planet is the one that figured out fire before it figured out everything else. The one that's been shaping ecosystems not just through what it eats, but through what it makes other things afraid to eat. The one that sleeps light, travels in groups, and carries 10,000 generations of successful survival in its DNA. That's you. That's what you are. So, yeah. Next time you're lying in a tent in the middle of nowhere, listening to the sounds of the dark beyond the nylon wall, and you feel that little pulse of ancient anxiety, that's fine. That feeling kept your ancestors alive, but the thing outside the tent, it's not coming in. It knows better.